Excellencies, distinguished delegates, I would now like to update the Human Rights Council on the situation of human rights in the Bolivarian Republic of Venezuela. Since the High Commissioner's last update in December 2024, we note the announcement by the authorities that thousands of people, including adolescents, were conditionally released after being detained following the presidential elections. According to state officials, 2,006 people have been released, whereas civil society puts the number at some 1,485 people. However, regretfully, arbitrary detentions are continuing. The independence of the judiciary is neither respected nor guaranteed. Counterterrorism legislation continues to be widely used to prosecute and detain people in violation of due process and fair trial guarantees, including...
On Wednesday, May 14th, the United Nations Human Rights Office released a statement urging the Venezuelan government to immediately cease holding its opponents, or those perceived as such, in isolation and incommunicado detention. After the office conducted a fact-finding mission, investigating the country's practice of enforced disappearances. In November of last year, 8 international organizations, including Reporters Without Borders and the Committee to Protect Journalists, released a report documenting different types of attacks against the Venezuelan press that occurred between July 1st and August 28th, the period surrounding the presidential election, which was held on July 28th. In the report, researchers found 228 press freedom violations. 11 foreign journalists were arbitrarily detained and expelled. 62 physical and verbal attacks on the press. At least 8 journalists remain arbitrarily imprisoned. And at least 29 websites belonging to media outlets and press organizations have been blocked after he was sworn in for a third 6-year term in January. Venezuelan President Nicolas Maduro, facing a New York federal indictment for narco-terrorism, conspiracy to import cocaine, possession of machine guns and destructive devices, and conspiracy to possess machine guns and destructive devices in violation of U.S. laws, now has a bounty of $25 million issued by the U.S. Department of State. And according to the UN Human Rights Council's fact-finding mission, the Venezuelan government continues to orchestrate a harsh repression against persons perceived as political opponents, or simply because they express dissent or critical views against the authority. Despite the harsh crackdown by the government, media workers in Venezuela are fighting back.
My name is Valentina Aguana from Venezuela, and I work in my organization is Conexión, Segura, Libre.
You're listening to The Divide. My name is Iris Xu. I ran into Valentina at RightsCon 2025, which is a summit on human rights in the digital age, where I ran into business leaders, policymakers, general counsels, government representatives, technologists, academics, journalists, and human rights advocates. And here's Valentina's story.
We've been in RightsCon before. Our organization defends digital rights and human rights, specifically in Venezuela, but we do a lot of work throughout the region, and also we have other international partners all around the globe, and our main focus is internet censorship and internet circumvention, and how to teach people to defend themselves online through digital security courses, but everything made easy for everyone, so anyone, it doesn't matter how high-tech they are or how little they know about technology, the idea is everyone can learn how to defend themselves and defend their rights. And right now we are focused on our anti-censorship newsreader app with an integrated VPN. In Venezuela, most news media outlets are blocked, all the main ones. So people can actually read the news without using some sort of VPN or circumvention. So what we wanted to do is make it easy for everyone in Venezuela, and these apps allow people to just go use the app and read the news without thinking on turning on the VPN and all the do extra step. It's just go to the app and read the news.
How dire is the media censorship in Venezuela?
Since many decades now, Venezuela has been we're living in a very autocratic and repressive state. Internet censorship has gotten worse every year, and it's not only public or internet service providers, it's all providers, including private ones, because the government makes the internet space in Venezuela makes it very, very, very restrictive. So all news media sites that come from the opposition or are independent are blocked. But also censorship has gotten worse. We've seen blocks against YouTube, against Twitter, against TikTok. Even at some point, we see how blocks to YouTube affects other stuff from Google, like Gmail, Google Drive, etc. So blocks has gotten worse and worse throughout the years. It's getting harder for Venezuelans to actually use the internet as normal users. But also there has been campaigns online from the government against activists, journalists, and just opposition leaders in general. And this terror campaign online is based on the fact that they are looking for people to arrest. So they use social media to promote this arrest and mock people, opposition leaders online for harassment. And it has gotten worse since the elections that we had on July 2024. The censorship has even gotten worse in the past few months, and our job has been to monitoring, to report it to our international audience, but also give people in Venezuela a way of how to counteract the censorship.
I asked Valentina, on the more technical side, how does the government block news from its citizens?
Yeah, of course. For example, there is a constant crackdown on news sites in Venezuela. So if you have a news site and it's clearly an independent media site, your site will probably get blocked. But that's from the internet part. Now, in the real world, journalists are being detained in Venezuela and they are being put in jail. Even people that are just for tweeting out or speaking about their opinions are getting in jail. Just a few days ago, a journalist that tweeted something against the government a couple of years ago was sentenced to 15 years in jail because of that. So journalists in Venezuela are in a very, very vulnerable position in which if they speak their mind, they are facing years in jail. And also there has been reported and also to the international community and the UN reports of human rights violations to these detainees and journalists in Venezuela. We are talking about torture, we are talking about very bad treatment of the detainees in Venezuela. And that's why a lot of people had to flee the country. And right now the journalist community in Venezuela lives right now mostly because of a lot of them are outside the country. I'm working with people who are inside, but most of the most important journalists had to flee Venezuela. Most of the charges are terrorism. So they charge them with terrorism charges or because they are swaying the public opinion against the government, and that comes up to terrorism. There's also a law that is literally called the hate law by the government, and the hate law is pretty much just to crack down on freedom of speech. So pretty much anything that the government doesn't want can fall into that law, and you can be accused of terrorism.
And Valentina's organization Conexión, Segura y Libre is doing everything it can to make sure that people have access to unbiased, uncensored news.
What we do right now, since it is very hard to be in this position, being a journalist in Venezuela, we want to make them easier for them to be able to still be live and still being able to post stuff online. So this is why we created the app, to make it easier on everyone. It is very hard to train people constantly to use VPNs and how to avoid internet censorship. So we created an app to make it easier on everyone and also help journalists. So if their websites are blocked in Venezuela, they're losing visitors and they are losing revenue from visits to the site. But with the app, they can literally get visitors again to those that they lost before the block. So promoting the app is a way of counter the censorship from Venezuela, and it has been a lot of work. And we also were talking about changing the behavior of users in Venezuela. It's very hard to tell people, don't do whatever you were doing for the past few years anymore. Don't click on the news in Twitter. Now you gotta use a different app. But the thing is that the news that you see online, if people in Venezuela try to open it, they don't because they're blocked. So people are being very receptive of the app in Venezuela. And finally, we also do a lot of training for journalists, especially in digital security and cybersecurity, since journalists are very vulnerable in Venezuela, so we're teaching them how to protect themselves while being in Venezuela.
So what kinds of training are the organization offering to journalists?
Besides the normal part that we always teach, like of course if you go to a protest, how you cover a protest, that you need to be your press badge and all this stuff. It's more about digital security on your personal security, like your password, having double factor authentication, use a VPN all the time. If you're gonna talk something very important, don't use SMS or calls, always use encrypted communication, just a signal. So we are teaching journalists a lot of things that maybe tech community already knows, but journalists not necessarily. So we are translating all this technical knowledge into the journalism work, because again, maybe political dissidents also knew about this, but since right now in Venezuela journalists are pretty much also political dissidents for the government, they need to know this, so we're teaching them on how to protect themselves online.
And by doing all these, does Valentina and her organization face any threats from the government?
Not directly in the past few years that we know of. That doesn't mean maybe they sent us something we didn't know, but not necessarily. However, personally, not organization, but personally, we really did feel that it wasn't safe to necessarily still be there. So that's why I'm not living in Venezuela anymore, and we decided to leave. Even if there wasn't a direct threat against me, there has been a threat against all NGOs in Venezuela. And there even has been recent laws banning NGOs in Venezuela to exist without being fully registered with the government, and you can't receive funding outside of Venezuela according to the law. So we know that these threats exist. There has been plenty of NGOs and plenty of executive directors from NGO that have been arrested in Venezuela in the past.
This episode of The Divide is produced by Radio Taiwan International.